meeting to order. We have a quorum of members of the Committee of Adjustment, 3 of us, and hoping that the other 2 members, Jerry Reed and Brenda Teeter, will join us when the ether permits. It's my responsibility to advise you to be aware of where your emergency exits are, and to ask anyone on the committee or staff wishing to declare any pecuniary interest in any items on the agenda to do so now, or to do so at the time of the agenda item is discussed. I think at this point, normally, if there are any general questions that members of the public would like to ask, knowing that we will ask again for specific questions at the time of the individual items on the 2 individual items on the agenda. But if there are any general questions or procedural questions that any of the members of the public would like to make known to us, now's the time. Seeing none, we have a meeting agenda in front of us. Is there any other business that anyone wishes to add at this particular time? I will make one further reminder of this towards the end of the meeting as well.
No, John, but I'm happy to move that we approve the agenda.
Thank you very much. Bob?
I'll second.
Second by Corinne. Are you making note of this, Susan? Thank you.
Yes, yeah.
Approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Any changes, amendments, notes? My only note, Susan, is that once again, I encourage you to take less time with the detail of your minutes and save yourself an effort. You're doing a terrific job with them, but it's more detail than we're normally expecting. If there are no comments, I'd ask for a mover and a seconder.
I'll move.
Corinne moves and Bob McCrae seconds. Very good. So that brings us to the first order of business for the day, which is the application on the subject property 12 Coles Crescent, Town of Mono. Normally at this time, just so that everybody knows, I ask the town planner first to explain the docket in front of us, and then entertain any questions that committee may have of him, and then move on to, if it's necessary, to the applicant and any comments they may wish to make, following which each committee member can offer questions, followed by any members of the public, and then myself, and then following that, any resolutions arising from it. So that's the order which I hope we can take this through. Having said that, David, I turn this file over to you to explain the docket.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Riley. As you've noted, this is an application for a new industrial lot. Essentially, it's an infill lot in the Hamlet area within the Coles Crescent French Drive Industrial Park. Property is 12 Coles Crescent. It's at the corner of the northeast portion of the industrial park area, and it has 2 access points existing. The request is for a portion of that lot between itself and 10 Coles to the south as a severed lot with about 59, almost 60 meters of frontage and an area of just under 0.81 hectares. That would leave a retained lot, or the piece left over or left, as 12 Coles with a frontage of about almost 84 meters and an area of 1.706 meters hectares, excuse me. Those frontages and areas meet the provisions or minimum provisions for the range of uses permissible under the commercial light zone. I think with that, I can just turn it over to Mr. Paul Tobia at Weston Consulting, and he can introduce his application as agent.
Before that, David, I just ask committee members if they have any questions of you specifically about the docket as you've circulated it to us.
I don't.
Corinne?
Question. I have one question, Dave. Can you explain, I know that in the report you state that there's no issues with water, and I guess I'm just looking for the clarity because I noticed a number of public people keep talking about the fact that Mono's water is at capacity. So I'm just looking for some clarity around any potential water issues that we may be trying to, I guess, distill.
Well, I'll take that as a pun, and that's a good one. But anyway, if you meant it, that's cool. I don't know. That was discussed with the town engineer. It is on municipal water, and Carly is here. I did speak to her. In her opinion, that's not an issue for this application at hand.
Can you, when you introduce a name like Carly, could you explain to everyone who she is?
Sure. I apologize. So Carly Dixon is with the town engineer, Burnside Engineering. Mono doesn't have its own in-house engineering department. We consult out to Burnside. Carly.
All right.
Carly Dixon is our engineer.
Well, welcome, Brenda. Welcome, Jerry. Brenda, your mic's on, so we are listening to you as well as the speakers.
Pardon? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome. We're
Okay.
into the discussion already. Thank you. Of the first item. David, sorry to interrupt you there. I think you were introducing Carly to make a comment on whether there's adequate municipal water supply for a facility as it's expressed to us as a worst case scenario, or alternately a best case scenario, but a repair facility for large concrete equipment. So take that as the example. Would Carly comment on the adequacy of the municipal water supply?
Hi, I don't know the details of what's going in, but that subdivision, the industrial subdivision in general, that was already accounted for in the water supply design. So when the public is speaking to new development, that's when the red flags are issued in terms of adequacy of the water supply. So those are the differences between those discussions that come up. And again, if the severance is approved, the application will be reviewed and detailed in terms of what they're needing for water, and if there is an issue, we'll certainly have to deal with that at that time. But that's an existing serviced industrial subdivision.
Thank you, Carly. Thank you, Dave.
Brenda and Jerry, we're just entertaining questions of David Trotman at this point about the docket that he has shared with us on the proposed severance on Cole Crescent. Do you have any questions of David Trotman before we go on to the applicant?
I just recall, Chair, that a few of those lots in there had minor variances because they were not large enough. They were too close to property lines to have their buildings big enough. I wondered if the 2 acres was going to be big enough, because we've had quite a few in the past.
David, do you want to comment on that and the average size of those lots in that industrial area, and how many of them are occupied? Because there are a number that certainly aren't being used.
There's a few that are still unused. 16 Coles Crescent, and I forget its counterpart to the north on French. I think it's 18 French. I can't remember. But they're roughly 2.5 acres in size, give or take. The zoning prescribes minimum lot area and frontage for the range of uses. I mean, the only thing I would say is an auctioneer's lot would require more area, but then again, if that were to be entertained, which I think is highly unlikely, but if it were, that would have to meet the test of its own minor variance, and that would be unlikely. So every other use would be permissible based on area, based on the zoning provisions.
Jerry, any questions of David?
And let me just say something further as well, just to follow what Carly Dixon said. Any, irrespective of a minor variance, if any one of the lots came forward for development, they all must undergo site plan control, which looks at all of the range of engineering matters and elements, as well as site architectural design matters, landscaping, vehicular entrance, parking on site, and so forth, lighting, exterior surface site lighting. All those get looked at, reviewed, and are entrenched in a legal agreement called a site plan development agreement, which is registered against title to the property. We take securities, and we have also, where they're applicable, apply the Development Charges Act fees as well, and the cost borne by the applicant, developer, or owner. So I'll just add that as
Thank
well.
you. Jerry, if you have a comment or a question, just press your unmute. Jerry, you're going to have to press your unmute. I know that that's negative, but that's the term that's used.
I think he's reaching for it.
The thing that looks like a red microphone, just perfect. Thank you, Jerry.
There we go. Yeah, no, I don't really have any comment. I looked at it today. The second driveway is obviously going to be the driveway that they use. And I'm kind of concerned about the size of the lots as well, because they're certainly full now, except the wee bit on the back behind the school buses down onto the second line. But other than that, I don't have any concern with it.
Okay, that being said, do we want to turn it over to Weston Consulting for any additional remarks that you may want to make before we go on?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is Paul Tobia from Weston Consulting. I'm here on behalf of the applicant for First Canada ULC for application B0321. I may show some slides. I believe I need to request that permission if possible. If not, I can just briefly go through the application as per. If not, I can just proceed.
I think you have the
He wants to know, John, if you allow him to share his screen, which is usual.
Paul, we do have your materials, at least in front of the committee members. If that's of any,
So I think it's working now. You should be able to see my presentation here.
Yes, I see
Okay.
it, Paul.
Thank you.
Okay,
So the purpose of the consent is to sever approximately 2 acres of the southern portion to create this new lot. As mentioned, it's for future use for building supply warehouse, storage yard, and repair facility for the owner of 10 Coles Crescent, which is a construction and concrete company. We understand that the newly created lot will be subject to any comprehensive planning application, such as site plan approval prior to any development. And the severed lands, as mentioned, will gain access from the secondary access off of Coles Crescent, and therefore does not need an additional curb cut to the site. So it allows for more flexibility and provides optimization of the use of the land. Just briefly, the property is 2.5 hectares, approximately 113 meters of frontage along Coles Crescent, and contains a one-story building for maintenance and repairs of school buses and their associated outdoor storage. To the north is vacant land. To the east is Second Line and some additional vacant land. To the south is the Premier Concrete Pumping Company that is the prospective purchaser, and to the west is Carstar Orangeville. As you can see, the proposal is to sever, as mentioned, 2 acres for 10 the owner of 10 Coles Crescent to purchase, and that will result in the retained lands being 1 point, allowing First Canada to. Briefly, some policy context that's in the staff report. The official plan, it's designated Greenbelt Hamlet area, which allows for commercial industrial uses. The zoning is commercial light industrial, which allows for a variety of non-residential uses. And some planning analysis, as discussed in the staff report, the severance has regard for the criteria of the subdivision of the subject property. It conforms to the consent policies of the town of Mono official plan. Severed lot is large enough to facilitate future development of the lands, and we understand site plan approval will be required prior to any development. That being said, it is our opinion, that the consent be granted and represents good planning, consistency with the policies, and allows for the underutilized lands to be optimized and contribute to the existing employment of the town of Mono. So with that, that concludes my presentation. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Can we go around the committee table? Bob, do you have any questions of Paul Tabaya?
No, I have no questions. I just want to acknowledge that I have read the 2 letters. The one from Beatrice Hand and the other one from the Bakers. I've read them. I've considered what they have said there. I'm happy with the application, and I will be supporting its approval.
Any questions or comments? Brenda?
No, I'll support this application too now that I know everything that's going on.
Could we get rid of the PowerPoint presentation, please, at your convenience? Corinne, any comments or questions?
No, just like everyone else, I've read all of the information, and I actually like the idea of adding some employment and building to Mono's growth and development plan. I definitely would also support this application.
Jerry, comments or questions?
No, I support it as well.
I'll offer my comments before I turn it over to the members of the public for their comments and questions. I too will support it, but I was quite curious, and I was curious because I do consider school buses to be an essential service, and you know, the population of the GTA is going to increase 4.5 million in the next 25 years. So school buses are going to be a necessary, parking them is going to be, and servicing them is going to be important. The lot is currently filled. So I was curious as to what is going on. And the only thing I could really come up with was that, on Google, it's reported that there is material uncertainty about the First Group PLC of Aberdeen, UK, about its ability to sell its North American subsidiaries, which resulted in the last tax year in pre-tax losses of 300 million pounds. This is the same company that closed down Greyhound across Canada. So I think they're trying to cash in some chips here, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's how the world works. So I just would have preferred that to be explained when the purpose in the report, Paul, of the Weston Consulting, the second page, the purpose of the application is expressed really. The purpose of the consent to sever application is to sever the property. Well, we know that. The question of purpose is really, why is this being done when Laidlaw, which is a bus service firm of great repute and value to our community, is possibly going to have less room to park and service its buses? Can you shed any light on that, Paul?
To you, Mr. Chair. Essentially, the operation is continuing, and they understood that to be some surplus land that they wanted to sell to allow Premier Concrete to grow their operation. So in fact, we're actually catering to two employers that have an agreement to help each other's businesses grow. So there's no new uses, and there's no vacancy of First Canada, but that's to my knowledge. It's just a logical transfer of property that's providing an expansion of operation.
Thank you, Paul. I have one other question of you, Paul, and that is that at the present time, there is a strip of undeveloped naturalized land immediately adjacent to the second line, which provides a kind of naturalized and visual buffer to the industrial, between the industrial activities of the permitted uses and people using the second line. Would you be averse to an additional condition that was an encouragement or a commitment to retain that narrow strip of undeveloped naturalized land along the second line, the second line, EHS?
Are you referring to the retained lands or to the severed lands?
No. I'm talking about the lands at the very east side of both properties that are between the current uses and the second line. It's a strip of naturalized, unused, undeveloped property that, in fact, elicited comments to me about, oh, I didn't even know the buses were there, because it's an attractive visual and naturalized buffer.
To my knowledge, what's taking place on the retained lands will continue. I don't see that naturalized area being affected or removed. As for the severed lands, that I believe should be associated with any site plan approval forthcoming application when the applicant makes that at that time. But I've read the conditions, and I'm comfortable with what's been proposed.
Would you be averse, David, to trying to add that condition either at this point or during the development of the site plan?
So we have a condition in the recommended report number 5 that speaks to the 2% cash in lieu of parkland or parkland, the actual land versus taking money in lieu of parkland. Both are used.
Yeah, that's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to if you visit the site, you'll actually see that along the second line, there
Yeah,
is
there's an embankment.
a
I
strip.
see on the info now. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm aware. It's deeper on the 12 coals than on 10 coals, just by way of comparison. But that could be, I mean, we have to take parkland as part of the application anyway. So it's something we could entrench in the site plan agreement for the new lot. I suppose, well, on that subject, I don't know if there's an existing site plan agreement for the bus operation, Paul. And if there is, it would have to be amended anyway to reflect the revised lot, and therefore to this matter that Chair Riley's bringing up, or could also reflect this matter that Chair Riley's bringing up.
There are on the other side of the second line residential homes. So the visual naturalized buffer, narrow though it is a useful part of, I think, the landscape design of a green belt hamlet.
I suppose we could we could have a condition it could be a separate condition that the town and the owner resolve to ensure that a strip of land of certain width, or relatively as it's existing now on site, be kept for buffering from the adjoining or the adjacent residential properties to the east of second line. We could put that in as a condition that the applicant agrees in writing to resolve to do that, to collaborate with town and do that. That would be over and above the 2% calculation, but that's standard anyway. The only thing I would leave Paul with is to find out whether there's an existing site plan agreement registered on title for the bus operation. I will try and follow up my end as well, but if you know, that would be helpful to know now.
To my knowledge, I'm not certain of that.
Okay.
So, do we know what?
Well, Jerry, go ahead.
I just wonder, do we know if that buffer is part of 12 or 10 at this point in time, part of the total acre?
Yes, it is.
Part of 12, Jerry. It's all a part of 12. The usable rear yard of 10 coals to the south goes back closer to second line.
And
so
has berms. So
yes,
has berms, and with that,
so if you give up on that naturalized visual buffer strip, you're going to have to go to the expense of adding berms anyway, and they're going to be visually much less attractive. I can tell you that.
Sure. And then when the 10 coals was wrapping up through site plan control, which I was part of, I wasn't at the initial stages, I required the tree saplings at the rear of 10 coals to be put in, and they're in there and hopefully growing well. I believe they are.
Good. So that being said,
in this condition.
Thank you very much, David. With that being said, are there any members of the public attending who wish to ask any questions or make any comments or remarks at this point? Seeing none and hearing none, I will ask any of the committee members to make a recommendation or a resolution. I would say in general, conforming with the conditions and the recommendations of the planning report, with the addition of that final condition of the promoting that naturalized undeveloped portion along the second line.
I will make that motion that it's approved with conditions.
Moved by Jerry Reed, seconded by Corinne. Thank you very much.
Second.
All in favor?
Right?
Seeing none opposed, thank you very much. Adopted. Thank you very much, Paul. Appreciate your contribution this evening.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Chair Riley, I don't know if we determined if there was anyone online who was wanting to speak to 12 Coles Crescent, and of course that
Yes,
would
I
be one.
just went through that, David. I asked if there were any members.
sorry,
that- I just went through that. I don't know.
Maybe I missed that on my audio. Okay, sorry.
Great. So let us turn ourselves to the application number A0221. The applicant being the Ontario Number Company 2715502, and their representative here from MHBC Planning to do with two requested variances related to a proposed hotel and medical center development as follows. One, the increase in the height of the proposed hotel, and as initially requested of the medical center from 3 stories to 4 stories. And second, to reduce the on-site parking from 154 to 135 parking stalls. So that is what was circulated to the public. Now, at this point, I'd like to turn this over to David Trotman and try and take us through this docket, which is a complicated, lengthy docket, and explain what are all of its moving parts as of today.
Okay, thank you, Chair Riley. So the second application, A0221, is a minor variance application for the vacant property behind and/or abutting west of Royal Chev dealership, which is situated at the southwest corner of Highway 10 and Monara Park Drive. It's been vacant for some time, but those lands, including the lands to the north, which are also vacant, were part and parcel of a plan of subdivision. I believe it was a plan of subdivision to prepare a secondary plan sort of designed for those lands that included commercial, which includes a subject property, and commercial lands to the north of Monara Park on the same side, and also the residential further west, supported or with access predominantly through Kingfisher, known as Watermark, the Watermark condominium residential neighborhood. I don't know before my time where the Monara Pavilion was already there, but if not, it had access through the extension of that roadway, and of course it's there today and it's been there for some years. The land is zoned commercial local exception 11. It's got a holding provision on it for site plan related matters. And there's a range of commercial uses that were prescribed when this area was undergoing review for both the residential and commercial aspects of development or for the area. A hotel is one of several uses permitted as of right on this property. And again, the zoning of these lands has been in place as long as any of the other uses existing to date have been there. The proposal came forward for minor variance for height for a 4th floor. And also at the time for some relief of the parking on site for both the hotel with its 4th floor and the freestanding building for the medical center. There were documents prepared. There was a parking justification prepared, but to cut to the chase, my report couldn't confidently recommend the variance basically because of the parking matter. I have cited some reference to the hotel fourth floor. It's under the second test. And in my view, it meets intent. So fundamentally, my position is the fourth floor doesn't have adverse impact. 3's permitted, 4 more meters, in my view, on that hotel and its location, and given the shadow studies submitted and its scale, I don't see, in my view, in my opinion anyway, as an impact. The fourth floor in and of itself. The parking matter has been resolved only recently with the applicant by removing the 3rd floor of the medical center. Parking on site is no longer an issue. They comply with the zoning bylaw requirements with a surplus of about 3 parking stalls. So the variance application of 2 matters was reduced to 1, which is the height of the hotel. Parking has been resolved by removing the 3rd floor of the medical center. And that was an update through to committee, I mean, in some haste because of the decision by the applicant to make that change. The rest of my report, I think, should stand on its own. But either way, there were 2 conditions cited in my report. The second one is also now non-issue because it related to the deficient parking. The first one stands, and that is that if committee chooses, if they choose to recommend or deny or defer, however, recommend, excuse me, then the first condition in my view should stand, and that is that the applicant, the minor variance for the height matter, which is the only matter before committee now, should be tied as a condition to an ECA environmental compliance approval from the Minister of Environment. And I wouldn't change on that matter, that if there's going to be an approval of the remaining sole variance for height on the hotel, that condition stand among standard conditions, of course. I think with that introduction on my behalf of my report, I could probably turn it over to the consultant if they want to discuss the application.
How does committee feel about that? Do you wish to, any of you, ask questions first of David Trotman?
I would, Chair. Brenda, I would.
Brenda, go ahead.
Yeah. Is it not premature then? Should they not have that approval before we would commit to answering one way or another?
That's an interesting question, Brenda. Could be that committee chooses to go a step further and say, well, we don't want a condition, applicant. We want to see the ECA in hand that demonstrates support of that 4th floor for, as it relates to the sanitary, the private septic system on site end, and also the potable water.
Right. Thank you.
Jerry, do you have any thing you wish to direct to David at this point?
I would think not only the environmental part of the 4th story, but I wonder about services, fire and rescue, etc., stuff like that. Do we have the ability to service that's height of a building?
I believe the report, I believe the design of the support submitted did speak to fire safety and attenuation. I would probably turn my mind to David Mercury, the architect who did the design. I believe he's online. Or certainly his partner, John McKinn, excuse me.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, the building meets all of the requirements, the flow test and everything. There's no issues for fire service or any services for the property. And to note, the same number of suites could be accommodated in 3 stories. The issue is not with that, it's with the brand that we have, the 4th floor. So it's not a matter of the unit count itself.
So it's going to be 4 stories over 3. We just took the medical off and it's only going to be 3 stories then, or I'm confused.
No, it cannot be 3 stories. As a Hilton product, it cannot be 3 stories. There's a mandated 4-story minimum for this brand, for all Hilton brands.
Well, that's unfortunate because the official plan has a height restriction, and you're seeking a variance from that height restriction.
Correct.
And I ask your in everyone's indulgence. I do have some questions that I have for the town planner first, which I will ask because I would like to share a possible resolution based on what we have seen so far and the process that's been followed. And then the applicant can make comments and public can make comments, knowing that I may well return to that resolution later on. So David, my main concerns, as I think I've shared with you already, let's say they start from the perspective of the public submissions that have been received to date. I looked very closely at 13 of them, and 3 more were brought to my knowledge this evening. I think 3 of the 16 are in favor of the application as proposed. 1 asks questions about the kind of the medical center that's proposed because of its ancillary requirements to do with waste and water use and sewage. And the other question raised was the matter of visibility of nighttime hotel signage. However, 13 of the 16 public submissions were opposed, and more than half of them were opposed specifically to the increase in the hotel height from 3 to 4 stories. 5 were opposed to the implied permission for on-street parking in the vicinity of the site, which is, no longer an issue, as David pointed out. And then there were 1 each about increased traffic, diminished property values, and too high road speeds. So those public comments were submitted on the basis of the planning report, which was also shared online, which recommended that the Committee of Adjustment deny the 2 minor variances, or alternately defer those variances and the discussion of them. But by email to the Committee of Adjustment members just yesterday afternoon, and not, I believe, yet shared with the public, we were informed that town staff, quote, could support the revised application, i.e. 4th floor height variance to the hotel, unquote, given certain conditions. So from the point of view of a public meeting, how do I express this? So at issue is how the public process works fairly. The public was informed that town staff wished to deny or defer the application, but then are told tonight that the town staff wish to support the application. So this is a reversal of advice, which was not reflected in the shared planning report that everyone in the public was commenting on or reviewing. So, perhaps there would have been more or different public input if the town staff had circulated its intent to support the application from the beginning. And similarly, perhaps more or other members of the public might want to attend a public meeting if they knew the town staff supported the application. This is complicated by the town's insistence that members of the public apply to attend a public meeting a week ahead of any meeting so that any last minute changes are similarly can't be brought by members of the public because of that 1 week delay. So I recommend that fairness to both the applicant and the public requires a deferral and a revision of the application and a revision of the staff report and recirculation of the docket to the Committee of Adjustment members and the public. I would ask that the recirculated docket include some additional comment on the following. Could you please deal more directly with whether this is a minor variance in the spirit of the Town of Mono official plan? I understand that a variance of height of 15 feet can well be considered a minor variance, but from another point of view, this may be seen as outside the general intent of the official plan. Just for context, the Town of Mono currently does not have a single convenience store other than those associated with a couple of gas stations. No grocery stores, hardly any retail, and what is existing in Mono Plaza is mostly closed. But here the Committee of Adjustment is being has to consider a 4-story hotel as a minor variance. So the applicant addresses this matter and calls the proposal, quote, the development of a commercial project at a local scale and form. It also states that the increase, quote, the increase in height is not anticipated to have any adverse impacts on neighboring lands. However, the overall expression of public concern is one, that this does not conform with local scale or form, and 2, is of a height that would have an adverse impact on neighbors. The second item that I'm sensitive to is the matter of water supply and sewers. So the Town of Mono official plan states as a basic objective for suburban areas, quote, to avoid the necessity for public water supply and sewage disposal systems in suburban areas until such time as additional growth pressures and the requisite engineering studies may justify the investment required for such facilities. So clearly, public services are not at issue here. What is being proposed is private services, but I fear that the future needs may well require public services in this regard. So the applicant states that the development be serviced by a private well, but there is no staff or professional guidance on the water requirements of such a hotel, nor such private wells impact on the Town of Mono's water supply, which is not far distant, part of which is not far distant from this application. The specific question is, how do 4 stories compare with 3 stories, which is the subject of the variance? And I understand from John McGinn's comments that 3 stories could accommodate the same number. That was not something that was previously made known to us. The same goes with the private septic. How do 4 stories compare with 3 stories? You know, and postponing such consideration until after a decision may be ill-advised. So the planning report as it stands now recommends an engineering study and an environmental compliance approval, an ECA from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, following approval as a condition of approval. But in this case, perhaps it should be recommended that an engineering study and an ECA be conducted and submitted before the Committee of Adjustment grants conditional approval of the proposal. So generally, this is all around a request in a revised docket to make a better and clearer statement of the rationale for 4 stories rather than 3 stories. So for these reasons, and while considering this application to be technically within the objectives of the official plan, I think the application is premature and insufficiently up to date in its, as of yesterday at 2:00 in the afternoon, in its request, in the application, in its staff report, and its analysis of public input. My possible recommendation to table later would be that the Committee of Adjustment recommends deferral of the application until such time as a revised application be submitted, which takes into consideration Committee of Adjustment comments, public comments, and those questions and comments raised by Mono Public Works, Mono Recreation, and others, given the proposal for private water supply and private sewers for this project, an engineering study and an environmental compliance approval will be completed and submitted before COA, the Committee of Adjustment, reconsiders the application. The rationale for this hinges on what Brenda mentioned, which is the prematurity of a decision in this regard and of a public meeting before all the related matters are submitted and revised and recirculated. So I'm sorry for that long intervention, but I just wanted to let the applicant and the members of the public know what one of the possible recommendations later on may be. That having been said, I'll turn it over to the applicants for commentary and presentation.
I'll share my screen. I have prepared a presentation, so I would like to take the committee and members of public through that. And then I have been jotting down notes based on the comments I just heard. And at the end of my presentation, there's a few points I'd like to leave with the committee before any consideration of the decision. And of course, I'll also be available to answer any questions, further questions the committee or members of the public may have. So I'm just going to share my screen here. Is everyone able to see that?
Yes.
Great. So my name is Corey Chisholm. I'm a partner with MHBC Planning out of our Barrie office. We do have a few members of our team with us this evening. So the owner of the property, Sandy Dollywall, is on the meeting. We also have the lead architect who you've already heard from, John McGinn from Chamberlain. We also have Tom Keane from Gunnell Engineering, who's specifically been working on the approvals for the proposed septic system for the proposed development. And we also have Jeff Curry from Hilton as well. So I'll take you through my presentation. As I mentioned, I have some additional remarks to add at the end. And then of course, I can make myself available to answer any further questions from the committee or members of the public that may be in attendance. And our project team is also available to answer questions. So the subject property, as mentioned by Mr. Trotman, is to the west of the Royal Chev dealership along Highway 10. There isn't currently a municipal address associated with the subject property. It does have lot frontage on both Menora Park Drive and Kingfisher. Menora Park being approximately 101 meters and Kingfisher being approximately 88 meters. We're looking at a site area of approximately 1.2 hectares. And it is designated as suburban in the town's official plan, as well as being zoned local commercial with a site-specific exception 11 in the town's official plan. So this is just to give some context from a zoning perspective. The property is zoned local commercial. As David mentioned, this site was subject to a secondary plan some time ago. So you can see the commercial zoning associated with the existing car dealerships and commercial uses along Highway 10. The subject property is circled in blue and behind. The purple is residential associated with the Watermark condominium neighborhood. And the orange to the north is a different commercial zone, highway commercial. So what's proposed, as mentioned, is a 4-story hotel. It's proposed to be a Hampton Inn and Suites by Hilton, and a 2-story medical center. And as mentioned, both a hotel and a medical center are existing permitted uses in the town zoning bylaw. We are fairly advanced in the town site plan approval process, which involves detailed design and review by town staff, as well as town peer review staff, of numerous technical documents, including detailed architectural drawings, various engineering reports, as well as confirmation that all the servicing can function appropriately for the proposed development. The access is proposed off the northeast corner of Manora Park Drive, as well as the southwest corner of the northeast corner of Manora Park Drive and the southwest corner on Kingfisher. And it's a 6.4 meter drive aisle that runs through the site. Further details include the stormwater management pond that is proposed is located in the southeast corner. We do have a potable water well proposed, which is in the northeast portion of the property. There's also a on-site septic proposed in these green areas along kind of the west and north property lines here. And full approvals for both the potable well and the septic while ongoing is required by law prior to the town issuing site plan approval, which is, as I mentioned, we're advancing through that process, but it is the next step after this to finalize that process. So David had gone through the file history. As mentioned, the original application was for 2 variances, the height, which is before you tonight, and we were requesting reduced parking total. The site had enough parking as far as the town zoning bylaw is concerned for both of the proposed uses, which at the time was the 4-story hotel and a 3-story medical center. It was when those parking totals were combined that we were deficient. So we had proposed a minor variance at that time. After receiving comments from the public and from town staff, we decided, we had another look at the proposal and decided to remove 1 floor from the proposed medical center. So it was reduced from 3 stories to 2. That's consequently reduced the gross floor area, which reduced the parking calculations. So as it proposed now, we actually meet the town's zoning bylaw parking requirement and exceed it with a surplus of 3 spots. So the required minor variance before the committee tonight is section 11(2)I, which is to increase the required maximum height in the local commercial zone from what's permitted currently of 10.67 meters to 15 meters. And the effect of this variance is to increase the maximum permitted height of the proposed hotel only from 3 stories to 4 stories. And Hilton has advised that corporately they require New Hampton Inn and Suites to be at least 4 stories in height. So I've included some additional material, and this is some of the material we look at when we determine our professional opinion on matters such as this. So this is the proposed elevation drawing, which has been submitted to the town through the site plan approval process. And this is the west elevation. So this would be if you were standing on the far west side of the property and looking straight across to the east at the front of the proposed hotel. Chamberlain has also prepared a few detailed rendering drawings. So this is, again, very similar view, but this is the architectural style that's proposed for the proposed development. Just another view looking slightly to the northeast in this one. So as mentioned earlier, there was a shadow study prepared in support of the proposed height variance. And if there's questions on this, the lead architect can speak to that in a bit more detail than I can, a bit further. But in summary, shadow studies look at what would the impacts be at kind of snapshots of certain times of the day at different times of the year. So this first one here is at the the periods when the sun is sitting lower in the sky at times of the day. So the top left, that's in December 21st. And that would be at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, midday at noon, and then the top right corner is at 9 a.m. in the morning in December. So similarly coming down, this is June 21st, so 6 months later, 3 p.m. in the afternoon, noon, and then finally 9 in the morning. So you can see the shadow impacts are a lot less in the summertime versus in the wintertime. Similarly, jumping forward, this is kind of another 6-month offset, but it's between March and September. So the top left is September 21st. That's 3 in the afternoon. The middle is at noon. And the one on the right is at 9 in the morning. And similarly, bottom left corner is March 21st now at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, noon, and then 9 o'clock in the morning. So I'll just jump back a slide, and through this, the largest shadow impact throughout the year is unsurprisingly in the middle of December. And you can see there is some shadow impact in late afternoon on the abutting car dealership used to the east. And you can see here, there's some shadow impact on the vacant property to the north, but there's no shadow impact reaching over to the existing residential uses in the Watermark community. And it should be mentioned that while this is a snapshot, it doesn't sit like that all day. It is a fluid process. So the shadow doesn't block those areas for sustained periods of time. It's kind of a movement as the sun rises and sets. So similarly, we look at where the building is positioned on the property. As mentioned, the hotel and the medical center are both permitted uses. So if we were proposing a hotel at 3 stories, we could locate it right on the western side of the property, and we wouldn't need to seek any minor variances, and we would be much closer to the residential uses to the west. So when we're assessing whether we can support minor variance requests for additional height, we wanted to keep in mind the compatibility with those existing residential uses. So we conscientiously located that building as far away as possible on the east side of the property. And this is just over 100 meters from where the front face of the building would be to the closest property in Watermark. And of course, there's many other dwellings as you get into the Watermark community that get further away from the property. Similarly, the proposed medical center is down on the south side, again, further away from those residential uses and closer to the commercial uses to the east. Another consideration is the change in topography. So this is on Menorah Park Drive, looking to the west. So you can see it is an uphill grade change as you get up to the Watermark community. And similarly, where the hotel is proposed on the far east side of the property is lower. So that helps to offset the increased height we're requesting as it relates to the existing residential uses to the west. So there is 4 tests for minor variance that we evaluate. So the first test is the variance in keeping with the intent of the official plan? So in my review, the site is designated suburban. The suburban designation permits a variety of uses, including residential, institutional, and commercial. And the intent of the designation is to ensure orderly and efficient development, as well as minimize conflicts between land uses and to protect natural heritage features. It's my opinion the proposed development introduces additional commercial uses in the area, which contributes to the planned function and orderly and efficient development of the area. Obviously, it also contributes towards economic development goals of the town. It's my opinion the use is compatible with adjacent land uses and provides sufficient separation from the residential land uses to the west, and that the minor variance maintains the general intent and purpose of the official plan. So the second test is the variance in keeping with the intent of the town zoning bylaw. So as mentioned earlier, the site is zoned local commercial exception holding 11. The intent of the maximum height is to ensure compatibility between uses and to mitigate potential impacts in terms of shadowing and local context. So the building requiring the variance in height has been sited, as I mentioned, as far away as possible from those existing residential uses to the west, providing the largest buffer possible. And we believe this transition in height from Highway 10 also complements the existing commercial uses along Highway 10 nicely. The shadow impact study prepared by the owner's architecture with no shadow impacts to the existing residential uses to the west. It's my opinion the minor variance maintains the intent and purpose of the town zoning bylaw. So the third test is, will the variance provide for the desirable development of the property? As mentioned, the site's designated and zoned to permit commercial development. And the proposal, in my opinion, provides for a form of development that is compatible and desirable for the surrounding area. And it's my opinion the minor variance is desirable for the appropriate development, use, and the planned function of the lands. Finally, the fourth test is the variance minor in nature? And it's my opinion the increase in height is not anticipated to have any adverse impact on neighboring land uses and is in character with the surrounding land uses. The site is proposed at lower grade than surrounding land uses, as such as the increased height will have a lesser impact, specifically to the residential uses to the west. And it's my professional opinion the proposed minor variance is minor in nature. So with that, in summary, it's my opinion the proposed minor variance would permit an increase in the maximum height for the proposed hotel from 3 stories to 4 stories. And it's my professional opinion the proposed minor variance meets the 4 tests of a minor variance as set out in the Planning Act and represents good planning. With that concludes my presentation. I would just like to clarify a few points further to the chair's comments earlier. And then I'm happy to open it up back to the committee or members of the public that might have further questions. I can certainly do my best to answer any questions, and we have a large team here with us this evening that can also assist. So I guess the first point I would like to address is the notion that the proposed minor variance for the increased height is premature because we have not yet have the ECA in hand for the proposed septic. So I'd just like to clarify where we're at in the process. So again, we're seeking permission tonight for the height, the increase of 1 story. If we were proposing the hotel at 3 stories, we would not need to be in front of the committee tonight. So the process then would just, which we're doing, would be the town site plan approval process. We're currently underway with that. The owner pre-consulted with town staff. We're provided a list of required studies and reports. We provided all of those, so the application was deemed complete. Those materials, as well as the town's peer review consultants, and certainly all the town comments have to be addressed before site plan approval is issued. Before site plan approval is issued, there's no way the owner can pull a building permit by law. So the site plan is the town's backstop to ensure proposed drinking water system, proposed septic, proposed stormwater is all sufficient to accommodate the proposed development. So again, the idea that we defer, in my opinion, is a bit unfair to the owner. There's a lot of time and expense to go through the detailed design to prepare all the material required to go through site plan approval. So what could happen is he goes through that whole process, which has already been over a year, get site plan approval, address all the technical comments, then we come back to the committee only to find out the committee doesn't support the extra story in height. Now he loses his contract with Hilton for the hotel, and he's out all that time and investment. So in my opinion, there's no risk to the town to approve the minor variance this evening. We see no issue if you want to tie a condition that says the ECA needs to be in hand for the septic. That anyways has to happen before the town will issue site plan approval. And even one step further, by law, before we pull a building permit, it has to be demonstrated that we meet all both the town and provincial ministry requirements for the septic, for the proposed drinking water, and for stormwater management. So again, I think there's a lot of backstops inherently built in the process that really what's before you tonight is, does the town support the built form of 1 extra story of height? And we get through that, the owner continues to progress through the very detailed and onerous site plan approval process. So I think that's all the points I wanted to add to the comments made earlier. And like I said, I'm more than happy to answer any further questions, as well as the owner and the project team are also on the line this evening. Thanks.
You're on mute, John.
You're on mute, John.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that presentation. And could I ask Committee of Adjustment members to pose any questions or make any comments they wish to of the applicant. Corinne, do you wish to start?
Sure. Thank you, John. One thing that I must say is I certainly am and cognitive of the fact that Mono is an extremely diverse community, and it certainly does need the growth and the development. However, I must say that I really do like John's proposal earlier with regards to deferral. Not that I do not like to hit issues on the head, rather, I feel that it would be a significant miss if we did not allow a lot of different community members to at least be heard and to voice their opinions with respect to some of the issues that certainly this poses, and is simplistic, as we spoke earlier, with regards to just distilling some myths that may be out there with respect to, whether it be water or some of the other issues that someone may have in the public. And if they have the proper information, that can actually be spelled out and taken care of as a holistic plan. So my thoughts and comments are, I would agree with John's proposal or the additional proposal to defer once we had absolutely all of the information so that everyone could be informed and actually reviewing and looking at all of the same information.
Bob, do you have any questions or comments?
Absolutely, thank you. I'm going to start by letting you know exactly what I think about this. I'm going to support two things tonight. The first one will make the applicant happy, because eventually when we get around to it, I will be supporting the application to increase from 3 stories to 4. So that will make you happy, and I don't mind playing that card now. But the second thing that I'm going to support is John's suggestion for a deferral. And why is that? It is for me, and I have a degree in urban planning and have been on the planning committee for over 26 years. As far as I'm concerned, and I support what Corinne said, the process is very important. And if the process isn't right, then the whole thing is wrong. And the fact that we learned some of these changes yesterday, and the public has not been informed of this, that to me is a major failing in the process. So I will be supporting a deferral until all of the information can be put out there. But let me talk about another few things here that I think we should all be aware of. First thing, the town of Mono, we do not have a lot of opportunities for commercial, industrial, or residential development here. And that I live right next door to one of them, which is Highway 9, and the other one is Highway 10. And as far as I'm concerned, this proposed use of this land is perfect and fits right in with the commercial, industrial, residential uses up Highway 10. So that's first thing. Second thing, Corey, you did a great job talking about the slope of the land and the effect of this. I wish that was in some of your other material. I went out yesterday. I spent a lot of time on the site and around the site. And as you said, the land slopes down quite a bit from the western Medora Park down to where you've proposed the hotel will be. In fact, it may well be the whole additional story of it. So, people who will be looking at it from the Watermark subdivision, they're not going to be looking at 4 stories. They're probably looking out at about 3. Second thing is the visual, and there were some comments from people about awful visuals. As you stand there and look at what there is there now, you can't be looking at a more ugly industrial building. No disrespect to our friends at Royal Chev Olds, but it is absolutely ugly. And I'm glad that you put in your renderings here of your building, because I'd rather be looking at that, quite frankly, than at Royal Chev Olds big boxy industrial building. Second thing, so I suggest that you really, I was in sales also for 40 years. To sell this to the neighboring people in Watermark, I suggest you get one of your Hilton artists to a great rendering of this, standing along the Menorah Park Drive, looking out to the property and how the hotel will look. Okay, height, slope. I think again the slope. Second thing about the view of Watermark, and I did spend a lot of time there yesterday. And no disrespect to the good people of Watermark, and I was involved when that development was approved. Almost nobody in Watermark from their homes will actually see this. They you know, so the visual impact on that is minimal to the majority of the people in Watermark. Water and septic. You know, quite frankly here, let's really make a good comparison here. Watermark has, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's about 250 homes, Watermark. Is that correct?
I think that's about right. I was looking at it as part of my plan.
Dave, we don't need to be exact, but I remember when this went through, it's about 250 homes. Correct me on this also. I think those 250 homes are on a well, right? They're not serviced by Mono Water.
Carly, I'm going to defer to you on that one. I thought they were municipal. Maybe you know. Not sure.
I don't think so because Golden Road sure isn't on that.
It could be a communal well, but I'll let Carly speak to that.
Carly still there?
They're on a public, like a communal well.
Yeah. Okay. So that's point number one is 250 homes are on a communal well. Second thing about the objections about septic, you're talking about a building here. Well, first off, 250 homes versus 84 suites in the proposed hotel. So that's second thing is the septic. You're talking about, and this I do know for a fact, is that the Watermark community is on a communal septic system. So there, to me, there's no argument here. There's, you know, it's like the pot calling the kettle black. You know, you're going to have 84 suites on a communal septic and on a well, which is a lot less than 250 homes that are in Watermark. So sometimes there are perceptions there. The last thing that I want to talk about here, and to the applicant, and I really would like you to do this. Get your graphics boys at Hilton to do this. Should this be approved, and again, I've told you up front, I will recommend approval of it. Should it be approved, though, one of the conditions must be, and this is something, Jerry, you and I have done this for years, there must be around, it would be on the north side and the west side, there must be, for visual effect, berms and trees that must be put in as a required condition of it. That will also minimize any negative effect on it. You may well have been doing that anyhow, but I will suggest that that should be a condition of it. And then, in fact, the good people of Watermark and anybody else will not be seeing an ugly square boxed building. They'll be seeing a very nice development. So you can tell I'm passionate about this, but I think this is a great use for this land. I think it will, Mono will benefit from it. The people of Watermark will benefit from it because we know they don't have a lot of parking there. When their children and grandchildren come to visit them, they'll have a place to stay, walking distance to their grandparents there. And the medical building, although there are no details to it, frankly, I wouldn't mind having a medical building that I could walk to as well. So I think there's some real benefits here done right. So I think I've said my piece here and that. But again, I will support the application, but I will also support, for the fundamental principle of proper process, I will support the deferral.
Thank you, Bob, for your positive comments. That's much appreciated. Brenda, could I ask any comments and questions you might wish to share?
I also support this application, but I also support the deferral first. First things first, keep everybody happy, but I do support this application whenever it's done right with all the conditions.
Thank you very much, Brenda. Jerry, questions or comments?
Yeah, I think it looks like it's going to be a real good project. But I certainly felt yesterday that we were going through torture, trying to figure out whether it was 3 stories, 4 stories, 152 parking lots, whatever, and back and forth. And that's certainly not what you want with a public meeting, because I'm sure that the people living next door are wondering what on earth are they doing. So I think if we get it right, we defer it and whatever.
Thank you very much, Jerry. So I've already had my time to speak. I was not brief, and I just would summarize it as a procedural matter of fairness to the public and the public process being the primary motivation for a deferral, and the additional benefit that I see to the applicant of being able to rationalize the private water supply and sewage treatment, so that it's presented as a positive attribute and provide us with the rationale or how those relate to the densities of a 4-story or a 3-story. And finally, I totally agree with Bob McRae that this is a perfect instance of where the provision of a bit of viewscape analysis, I think, would really help people visualize what it may look like driving up Menora Park and heading to the skiing of a winter weekend. So with that said, could I now ask members of the public to unmute themselves and make any comments or ask any questions that you may wish to. And if you would introduce us to yourselves by name, then it will provide Susan with the opportunity of recording it correctly. Are there any additional public comments or questions that participants wish to raise at this point? I'll give you another moment or two. If any of you are trying to but have not unmuted, now is the time to unmute. You see that red microphone? You want to click on the red microphone. There you go. Welcome.
Thank you. I've got Jim and Brenda Dewey. We're Watermark residents who are actually at the south end of the subdivision and face east and get to look at the lovely Royal Chev building down the road. I agree with what you've said, and whoever the suggestion was, I think it was Bob's suggestion, that a sightline viewscape would be very helpful for the people that actually face onto the proposed building. And if we could see something like that, I think that would be fantastic. One of our concerns obviously is, although we aren't going to see the entire hotel, there still are lighting issues with the parking lot. So hopefully there's going to be some information on what we can expect to see on a nighttime basis, because parking lots are lit up just like the car dealerships are 20, whenever it's dark, they come on. So that would be really helpful for us as well. I appreciate you giving us the opportunity, and hopefully we look forward to having a public meeting where more of the people who are going to be impacted by this can participate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public wish to contribute or comment at this particular point? Seeing
if I can share, if I have an opportunity just to make a couple comments before you guys make your decision. I'll just to respond to the member of the public, appreciate the comments. As I mentioned, we are progressing through the site plan approval process, and one of the requirements through that the town requires is for the applicant to provide a lighting plan, and then that is reviewed and ensured that it meets town standards. So there is some control from the town's perspective on how lighting is incorporated on the site, and there's requirements today, dark sky lighting, whatnot, to reduce spillover effects onto adjacent properties. Additionally, I can't remember which member mentioned it, but requested, actually I think it was Member McCrae, of planting some additional landscaping to help with some buffering. So that's certainly something the owner is open to incorporating. And again, I anticipate would be demonstrated through the specific landscape plans that would be prepared through the site plan process. I will just say we have been at this quite some time. I think it dates back to late last year when we embarked on the minor variance process. We are disappointed that we have to defer. We feel like we have addressed the requirements to demonstrate that it is a minor variance. It is costly for the owner to defer and delay things further. I know he was optimistic to try to get shovels in the ground before winter this year. I would just ask that I believe since COVID, the town hasn't been having a regular meeting every month. It's been sort of on an as-needed basis. That was one factor that did lead to a bit of a delay in us getting before you here this evening. So I would just ask, I think based on the comments we heard tonight, there's some additional information the committee is looking for that I think we can certainly put together. And we just ask that all efforts be made that we get the application recirculated and brought back at the soonest possible date, just to assist the owner in continuing to advance the project.
Thank you very much, Corey. I can assure you that as soon as the planning department receives the material and circulates them appropriately, we can have that meeting. I don't think any of us on the committee are doing much traveling these days, so we are available. So and eager to act on this. Mr. Totman, yes.
If I may, Chair Riley, I think if committee is going to defer, and I obviously haven't seen the decision yet, I'll just make a few comments, and I respect the understanding of that. The only thing I would say, if they looked at it as approval of the condition of ECA, bear in mind that if the ECA failed, so too does the variance. But that aside, if committee chose to defer, I think at this point, it's important that we be clear about the other things, the other elements, the other profiles, particularly as Member McCrae mentioned, just itemize these things that you want to see so we're pretty clear on what the applicant needs to bring forward back to Committee of Adjustment. I mean, obviously one of them is an ECA in hand, fine. But does this include the photometrics or some axiometric modeling of the photometrics, which I think can be done? We need to know that. So it's in front of committee.
Could you explain what you mean by that?
So as Corey did mention, we have a dark sky policy. Our engineers are pretty darn good at making sure there's no light spillage from any one proposal of development of any land in our urban suburban areas, and they do look at that. We always require a photometric plan which proves there's a cutoff of lighting on a site. I am also very wary of site lighting, as mentioned by one of the Watermark resident, that it be subdued, that it be in the context and character of the area. Absolutely. So I think some photometric design work could be brought in hand back to committee. I think that some profiling modeling could also assist. And you know what? In the creative world of design, there's a host of other things that can be done here on site or even off site to assist with Watermark residents' concerns. I'm looking at the ortho mapping right now where the sanitary septic system is, and I don't see why, for example, saplings couldn't be put on the west side of Menorah Park along that line to create some screening if that's what the residents in that area of Watermark wanted. So there's, I just would say that committee collectively try and itemize what those things are so that we know what's coming back in front of committee. Thank you.
So if it would help you in that regard, I would amend the recommendation for deferral by the addition of at least 3 of those items that Mr. Trotman just mentioned, knowing, I think, Corey, that you have been taking notes and you have available to you the public comments that have been shared. So you will know what is generally expected. But
and then just sorry, I just would like to respond to the items listed by David. While we acknowledge, this is of course this is added expense for the owner to prepare some of this additional material, and some of it, for example, the lighting plan, I understand, was previously submitted as part of the site plan application, and it sounds like there might be a bit of disconnect between some of the materials that have been submitted through the site plan approval process and what the committee has seen. But I'd just like to point that out, that has been previously submitted to the town and reviewed. I think from an architectural perspective, we can circle back with our architect and owner after, but I think, they've prepared these nice renderings. I think we can maybe put together a couple extra visuals to assist. The notion to have the ECA in hand is problematic for us because it's a long process to get the approval through the ministry, and honestly, the timelines of the ministry, it's tough to predict how long that will take. And again, this is delaying the consideration of the built form further than I think is required. Again, the town, we're going through the site plan approval process, and what David Trotman mentioned was, if you tie the condition of the ECA being approved to the variance, the town's protected that if the ECA fails, so too does the variance. Similarly, we cannot get site plan approval unless we have an ECA in hand. So I don't think that should be something that's needed before consideration of the minor variance.
Thank you, Corey. Please take it as a clear expression on my part that I'm quite aware of the fact that you have submitted materials to the planning department that have not been shared with the Committee of Adjustment in summary form or in full form. And so part of this request in this deferral is for the planning department to make a better planning report for us to base decisions on. And because that is fair to the public as well, who are taking in this process. I appreciate all the work that you have done to date, and I think we have benefited from your presentations this evening in knowing the degree to which you have progressed on this file in substantive ways. One more comment from Mr. Trotman.
Comment on that. There is 2 processes at hand. One is site plan control, one is minor variance. A lot of the reports, or some of the reports that Corey has spoken to, are part and parcel of the site plan review. If we take it to the extreme, I could have the architect submit the structural section drawings as part of minor variance. So there are reports that we typically bring to bear as part of a minor variance application versus those that would go necessarily through site plan. So no, there may not be every
understand,
single
David, but-
report that was
But
uploaded. as part of the minor
we're trying to focus on this matter before us, which is the variance in the height. And so, for example, I won't be introducing into my motion a discussion of dark sky design, because that's, I don't think, is germane to the discussion of the matter before us, which is the variance and the increase in height. So, however, I do think that viewscape analysis and vegetative buffering may well help to carry the day for the applicant.
Well, the shadow study is on the application, as is a site plan, which reflects the schematic landscaping.
We've received that. We've received that. So we're not speaking to that. So that having been said, I'd entertain resolutions, and if there are none, I would impose the one I read before on you again with minor amendments. Shall I do so?
I would do that. John. I agree with that. You might amend into it. I don't think we should try and put the applicant through any more hoops than we have to do. And I appreciate it costs money, it takes time, and we want to get shovels in the ground just as badly as he does. But I truly think that
Well, Jerry, I take your advice, and I'll leave it. I'll leave the resolution exactly as I have written it, and I read it before. I will read it once more again, and then I'll share it with COA Committee of Adjustment members and the planning staff digitally. The COA recommends deferral of application A02/21 until such time as a revised application be submitted, which takes into consideration Committee of Adjustment comments, public comments, and those questions and comments raised by Mono Public Works, Mono Recreation, and others. Given the proposal for private water supply and sewers for this project, an engineering study and environmental compliance approval will be completed and submitted before COA reconsiders this application. The reason for this recommendation hinges on the prematurity of a decision in a public meeting before all related matters are submitted and/or revised and recirculated.
John, let me comment on that. Didn't we just talk about the difficulty of having an actual environmental compliance approval in advance of us voting on this variance? So I would be tempted to we know that will come, but to have.
Well, I mean, I don't think I don't understand the complexities of this, but I wish to know whether the ground supply of water, which is, is the number one constraint on the development and the growth of Orangeville, the neighboring municipality, and which is finite, and from which Mono is already pumping significant amounts of water in the immediate vicinity. I fundamentally want to know, is there enough water? And is it going to affect Mono's ability to supply water going forward? So if I could put in an engineering study and or environmental compliance approval as a way of giving the applicant the ability to maybe address this central matter of where's the water coming from and where's the waste going to, without perhaps, through either an engineering report, an engineering study, and or the ECA. So
if I may speak to that, Chair Riley, that's a very interesting point. It's a good point. Bear in mind, if this was 3 stories, we would not be in front of committee. And I think the engineers are here that can speak to that matter. Committee can make its own decision. I put my recommendation for that if it does get approved, the height it be subject and tied to the ECA. But I think at this point, it might be useful for the engineer on the applicant side and our town engineer who's here to speak to that. I mean, again, I put it in the context of if this was a 3-story proposal, it would not be in front of committee and would still need to go through that process. So it's important that the services be met and fulfill the town's requirements. But I think maybe the 2 engineers could speak to that and give a bit of clarity to committee.
David, I take some exception to what you're saying. I've lived here for 75 years of my life. There's ponds within 3 miles of that have dried completely up. Climate change, whatever it might happen to be. But if we build any kind of a hotel, and believe me, I'd like to see a hotel there or whatever. I think it's a good proposal. I have nothing wrong with that. But if we put it there and 2 years from now, there's no water, what good is that going to be? Or are they going to come to the town and say, we want to be off the water pump on 5 Side Road or whatever? The problem with it is, and we can argue this all we want, people, let's use some common sense. I'm on a private well. I live 5 miles away from it myself. And if you don't have water, you might just as well piss up a creek because it's not going anywhere.
That's right. That's right.
So how about the 2 engineers weigh in on this and speak to that, given the information that the designers have?
Well, David, they have had opportunity to provide this information to us in the planning reports that were circulated to us. So for this, and the matter of water supply and sewers was not dealt with in a fulsome manner. So let's not, I would suggest, belabor this point, given the lateness of the evening. I would defer to the applicant, to Corey, to make a comment on whether or not the amendment, so that it reads an engineering study and or environmental compliance approval be completed and submitted is more acceptable, because, again, to Jerry's point, this is high, dry headwaters country. The land is very droughty. I can tell you this, and there is not water everywhere. Everybody who lives on the countryside on farms can tell you stories about drilling wells until they've run out of money. So
yeah, thanks, Chair. And just to that point, and similarly, again, if we weren't in front of the committee, if this was 3 stories, the town still needs to review whether the septic and well can work. And the process for that is through the site plan approval process, which we're actively going through. We have submitted a hydrogeological study through that quite some time ago that both assessed the potable water supply as well as the septic. Both of those reports demonstrated that those can function. And that was when the proposal was 4 stories hotel and a 3-story medical center. So we've actually reduced the medical center by 1 story, thus lessening the overall demand on the site for both drinking water and sanitary. Those studies have been reviewed by the town's engineering consultant. They haven't raised any concerns with either of those. And again, it will need to receive final approval before we get through site plan approval. So I'm really challenged to have our client tied to a condition that this ECA needs to be approved. I think it is unfair on him. And that could lead to substantial delays in the process.
This is not a procedural issue of our creating. We have not seen that, nor has the public seen that. We haven't seen it in summary form or in full form. And it would have been useful in this regard in Headwaters country. So
I will point out it is unusual with considering a variance for height to go through the full gambit of re-justifying the servicing when we already are going through the site plan approval process. I will mention we do have Tom Keene on here from Gunnell Engineering, and he's the one actively for the owner dealing with the ECA process. So I'd just like to pass it over to him. Maybe he can share a few words regarding that. And then to David's point, perhaps the town's engineer could weigh in and elaborate a bit on how the town has.
Again, I'll just raise this procedural matter. This is being raised now in a public meeting to those people of the public that happen to be able to be here. So it's not online. It hasn't been shared with the public. So it's not that I'm questioning the veracity of your work. It's the procedure by which this material is shared with the Committee of Adjustment so that we can deal with. This is not just a minor variance of the addition of a height of an additional story on a house somewhere. This is a major development in Mono, and we would like to see it succeed. And so the procedural niceties of getting it, getting the information shared in full or in summary form, why would the planning department not wish to do that and make you look better as a result? That's what
I have no issue providing a summary of we can include those reports in our recirculation and providing a summary, but the requiring the ECA to be in hand, that in of itself has potential to substantially delay us. I don't think providing us a brief summary of the overall servicing scheme back to the committee really delays us much further. But to David's point, perhaps our engineer could speak to that, and I'd be curious to hear the town engineer's comments as well.
To your point, Chair Riley, the comments from Burnside as revised are uploaded to the webpage for this minor variance, so they are there for the viewing.
I would ask Corey, you to introduce your engineer if you wish to make some brief comments in this regard.
It's Tom Keene from Gunnell Engineering, and I see he's taken himself off mute there, so hopefully we can all hear him.
Yeah, thank you, Corey. So where we currently are at with the ECA process, we've been dealing with the Ministry of the Environment on this project for the better part of a year now, if not more. So we've gone through, there's two real stages in this process in getting a sewage system approved and ultimately getting an ECA approval for a sewage system design through the Ministry of the Environment. We've completed recently the pre-submission consultation stage. So really at that stage, we're presenting the ministry with the development proposal in whole and with a main focus on the proposed sewage system solution to service that development. So what we've done is we've proposed a technology and working in conjunction with the hydrogeologist who happens to be GHD on this project. They've completed a sewage impact study on the property and have basically concluded that the level of treatment that we need to treat to coming out of the treatment unit needs to meet ministry reasonable use criteria, which is essentially the most stringent criteria that we need to meet, which is mainly due to land size and lack thereof in terms of we don't have any land to dilute the effluent. So we have selected a technology that will meet the effluent criteria that the ministry has laid out for us. They've accepted that technology in conjunction with the proposed layout, our septic field as well. The sewage treatment plant will be located behind the hotel to the, I believe, the east side of the hotel. And from there, it will treat the sewage and will pump it to the dispersal fields on the north and west corner of the property. So to this point, they are happy with the proposal. One of the main things that they wanted to see, which took some time to go through the process, again, working with the hydrogeologist GHD, was a monitoring plan, which is common with ECAs. They want to know that how the effluent targets they set out will be met and consistently met as the development is completed and is underway. So we've completed, and then they've now approved a monitoring plan where there will be monthly monitoring and sampling through the drilling of several monitoring wells on the property. One which will be up gradient of the sewage system to track nitrates from any up gradient development, notably the Watermark subdivision, and then of course 2 additional monitoring wells at the down gradient corner of the property, which will be sampled and monitored to track the sewage treatment from the system that we've proposed, in addition to raw sewage and effluent sampling directly from the plant. So there's a pretty stringent monitoring plan in place to ensure that treatment will be maintained, and the effluent criteria that the ministry lays out will be satisfied on a continuing basis as the months and years pass. It is the ministry's mandate to protect public health. We're dealing with both subsurface and surface water specialists there, and have been for some time. So, we understand we need to get an ECA approval, and having completed the pre-submission technical review and then being satisfied with the technology, we now are in a position to proceed with the full sewage system design, engage the manufacturer to provide us the details, and put a complete ECA application and design package together for their final review and approval. As Corey's point, though, it's typically a 12 to it could be 18 months at this time, given COVID, but usually a maximum of 12 months or less, hopefully.
And Tom, what you're communicating to us is that's based on the 4-story design of the hotel.
Well, it's based on 84 rooms, so our flows, regardless of.
Fair enough. That's the metric. You're quite right. And Tom, that's new information to us, which helps us understand that the 84 units is a possibility with regard to on-site private sewage treatment. How about potable water supply?
If I can jump in, I think Tom's purview on the project is strictly with the wastewater. GHD was not able to attend this evening, who are the authors of the Hydro-G study on the potable water. But as I see the town engineers on the meeting, I thought maybe she could share some insights on the process with the potable water supply.
Yes, and actually just to follow up on Gunnell's report, we actually did contact Gary Tomlinson from the ministry just to confirm that we can expect for the applicant to obtain their ECA. And Gary said, they had a long haul through the pre-consultation process, but that we can expect that they'll receive an ECA for their sewage system. So it's just a matter of time for that. In terms of the potable water, the applicant did submit a Hydro-G report. Burnside has 2 remaining comments to be addressed on that report, which we haven't received responses to date on. I can go through them. They did do a test well on site and did a pumping test. So they found sufficient water, and they monitored on-site overburden wells, shallow aquifer wells. But we did have a question because they didn't monitor any bedrock wells. So we need to confirm whether we're going to get any response in the bedrock. So that was one comment. And the other comment was just to support their interpretation of the Hydro-G report, just related to whether there's in fact a clay layer that basically separates the shallow aquifer from the deeper aquifer that they get their well supply from. So there's 2 outstanding issues there that we've been dealing through with the report submitted as part of the site plan process. So we wouldn't support approval until those last 2 comments have been adequately addressed.
Ms. Dixon, is part of your analysis any effects on present or future mono requirements for potable water or the present pumping stations? Would they be operational in the same aquifer, the deep aquifer?
My hydrogeologist unfortunately couldn't attend tonight, but he would review that aspect related to the impact of this development.
Okay, good. I'm glad.
Yeah. So is the, Ms. Dixon, do you know if the Subwater 19 study is still available? And Burnside should have that. But anyway, that gives you an overview of the whole area. And it was originally done in 1996, I believe, because I was part of that with the Conservation Authority. Or maybe 92, I'm not sure.
Our
But anyway,
hydrogeologist is pretty familiar with the area, but I'll make sure he has awareness of that report.
Because they do have wells, they've got wells out as far as me and all around the area in Calais.
Right.
And they should be able to give you the information on depth of water from the original water drilling in 1996 to now, and what the uses are, sort of thing, I would think.
Yes.
And Carly, could you confirm that all this, outstanding comments, would be ensured to be addressed before the town would recommend or issue site plan approval on the overall project?
Yes. Yeah.
So Corey, I think we're narrowing this, and if I change the wording so that it's expressed as an engineering studies and or environmental compliance approval, that opens it for you to report on the studies that have been undertaken and are in process, which would suffice, and focus those on, whether or not that satisfies 84 units, and whether the spatial distribution of those 84 units in 3 stories or 4 stories is in any way relevant to this, or relevant. Like if you were to do it in 3 stories, I would expect that the building would simply be longer and more elongate, which might cut into the stormwater management or the beds for the septic or whatever, but that kind of framing it would suffice.
And they provide of what we've done to date and to what the process is through site plan, all the assurances that the municipality has that these will be addressed. But I think it's ours to require any further studies than what we're doing through site plan approval.
Fair enough, Corey. I accept that, and I think I tried to communicate that to you. What I'm trying to do is make sure that as much of that material in summary form or in full is made available to the public, because when they see an application and all they're being asked about is height variance and parking variance, they want to know, hey, what's going on here? I haven't heard much about this. So this is your opportunity to put your best foot forward on this and bring the public on side. As I think, Jerry and Brenda and Bob and Corinne have all hoped will happen.
Can I say something? There seems to be good support for the project and for the variance from the committee here. So what we really need to do is to write this resolution that we can all live with, and we do that and then convene another meeting within the next month, and then we're all off to the races. And Corey, you can look happier than you're looking right now. Does that make sense?
I think as long as it's us providing a summary of what we've doing through the site plan approval process, and it's stuff that we can certainly turn around quickly, but I'm concerned to put any additional requirements on our client before the minor variance is considered, such as the ECA being in hand. As you heard from Tom, that could be quite some time. So if that's a requirement, I think we wholeheartedly would have to push back on that. But I think we can put it together a summary to address some of the comments we've heard here tonight with the revised material we provide.
If we cut right to the chase, I think that would make the township, the town of Ona look better as well. And so I think that, David, I hope you're on there, but you should be making sure that we look good at this too, whenever this thing's done, because if you in fact don't, why, we don't really need this committee of adjustment. Like, you should have most of that stuff in front of us, I think, so that we know what's going on. The public should know what's going on, and we shouldn't be jumping around 2 days before changing things up and down. And I appreciate that happens. I've been in business and I've been in enough management in big companies and one thing and another. But I think it really behooves us to, if that's such a word, to take a very serious look at this before it's put in front of a committee, to a volunteer committee at that has final say on something like this, and end up putting a landowner in some jeopardy and some costs. That should be all dealt with before it comes to us, and then it doesn't have to be deferred or anything else. If we're fully in the know, I don't see any reason that we would have to defer this or anything else, because I think see heads nodding and one thing and another, and I think we're all in for the better of the township, and I include Hampton and the new owner in that. We want to see commercial development go ahead, and so anyway, we've got to work together in that, but we have to be transparent with each other with it. So anyway, here endeth my bit of trite, but anyway.
If the big sticking issue here is insisting on an environmental compliance approval, if we strike that from your resolution, John, is that the end of the world?
Well, I've already sorted that out for you, because if it says, to report on the engineering studies and or environmental compliance approval, then just leave it as it's. We've already circulated with these minor adjustments, because we've just had a bit of a summary of some of these engineering studies, of which neither we nor the public had any earlier inkling. So if in fact by some miracle an ECA does come online, so be it. But we're not requiring that. So. But
John, if you say and or, then you have. So why don't you just say an engineering study or environmental compliance approval? If you say sure. And or, then you've required it.
Oh yeah, I follow you absolutely.
You really want to say or?
That would be the change, Bob, that I intend.
Okay, yeah. So we're saying engineering study or environmental compliance approval, or.
Yes. Or.
Okay. Then I think then we have no impasse here.
Very good. So Bob, shall I take it that you would make that resolution, and I look for a second?
I'd love to move that. Yes, please.
And I'll second it.
And seconded by Jerry Reed. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
That's a unanimous agreement. Could you please record that in the minutes as being unanimous? Thank you very much. I think we're doing the public process, the due tribute that it requires to inform and to invite comment. And I hope this does not slow things down inappropriately as a result.
Thank you for your time this evening. Certainly, appreciate you guys volunteering your time, and we look forward to seeing you in about a month's time.
Thank you, Corey. Thanks all.
Thanks. Take care.
Thanks. As a committee, can we commit to having this next meeting within the month?
Well, let's just commit that when the materials are submitted to the planning department, that David Trotman and Susan will try to amend their staff report, maybe even in advance or anticipation of that, and get the materials to us as quickly as possible for a meeting as soon as possible.
Okay, excellent. No problem. I'm sure David is committed to doing that as fast as possible. This would be one of the biggest projects in the town of Mono in a long time. So it's, you know, we're doing it right by deferring, but we need to do it as fast as we can while doing it right.
Thank you. That being said, can I ask for any other business that anyone wishes to raise at this late time of the evening? Seeing none, a motion to adjourn. Corinne moves it and Jerry Reed seconds it. Thank you very much all, and I will send out an email with that resolution to everyone with the oars in the right places.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Good meeting. Thanks, John. Thank you,
Thank you.
Susan. Thanks, Dave.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Keep well.